Who saw it this weekend? Cowboy Joe West. Yeah, Joe West, the umpire, he's terrible. Not as bad as Angel Hernandez. He's not a good umpire. He's a total egomaniac. Baseball's been trying to get rid of him for as long as I can remember. He's the guy who never goes away. They prayed to God he would opt out of this year because of COVID. He said, forget it. Opt out. I got a record to make. He wants to umpire the most games in history. He's been around forever. Go to like forever and then go 2 weeks after that. That's how long Jersey Joe West has been around. Or Cowboy Joe West. I don't think it's Jersey Joe. Anyway, this weekend, he was doing a game between the Nationals and it could be the Braves, but I could be wrong. But that's a good guess because they're in the same division. All of a sudden, Joe West looks into the crowd. By the way, all there are cutouts in the crowd. Looks into the crowd and ejects somebody. Everyone said, "What? Who are you ejecting? What's going on?" And then the camera goes to Mike Rizzo, the newly extended president of baseball operations for the Washington Nationals, the defending champion Washington Nationals, who are having an absolute terrible year. They were my pick. Believe me, I'd like to forget about this, talking about accountability from getting the show. I'd like you never to remember the fact that I said the Nationals are in the World Series. So I'm going to talk about it really quickly and then never mention it again. Of course I will when they don't. Mike Rizzo was in the GM suite, which is way above the field. Apparently, Rizzo was heckling Joe West. Now, we've all been upset at umpires. We've all yelled at umpires from the suite. Now, there was a time when people sitting next to the dugout, team representatives, have yelled at umpires and the umpires hear it. That's not good. When you're up in the suite, you can yell as loud as you want because even in Marlins Park with 5,000 people there, they're not going to hear you. So I'm not sure why we'd ever yell, but we would. What Mike Rizzo must have forgotten is that without fans, that noise that we hear when we're watching games, just a quick FYI, that noise is not in the ballpark. That is being pumped into your TV feed. So the ballparks are very, very quiet. So anytime anybody says anything, the umpires can hear it. And when the umpires hear it, they can eject you. So Mike Rizzo was on Joe West's case. Joe West ejects him. The announcers thought that it could have been because Mike Rizzo wasn't wearing a mask. And the rule is that if you're in the ballpark, you got to wear a mask. And I said to myself, there is no way that even Joe West was ejecting Mike Rizzo for not wearing a mask. I don't think Joe West could see Mike Rizzo not wearing a mask. And that's not a typical umpire has no eyes comment. That's just sort of life. Turns out that Mike Rizzo was telling Joe West that he was being brutal and other things like that. And Joe West had had enough. Then Joe West came out with a statement that said, I wouldn't take that from a player. I wouldn't take that from a manager. If it was Donald Trump, I'd eject him too, but I'd still vote for him. That is Joe West in a nutshell, mic drop. I'm not upset that he votes for Donald Trump. I want to know the relevance of putting that into a statement about ejecting a president of baseball operations for telling you that you suck at being an umpire. What is the relevance of that? MLB then had a counter with their own statement saying we have already been in communication with the Nationals regarding what transpired, and we will speak with the umpiring crew today. We will expect Joe West's crew to provide a full account of their perspective, and we will follow up with them accordingly. I know MLB very well. That is an MF to JW so definitively. MF, you know what that stands for. JW's Joe West. That's an MF to JW. That statement. I would have written a statement like that. It's so perfect. You think they're going to suspend Mike Rizzo? NAC, baby. Not a chance. I was never thrown out of a game. I had thoughts when there were brawls that I was at. The one with Gabby Sanchez clotheslining where Miguel Olivo, when Miguel Olivo ran toward the third baseman during a game, when Gabby Sanchez clotheslined a guy, when our guys were getting hit. I've had many times where I thought about, but remember, I'm 5'5", $129. I'm not really going to go out there or do anything, but I just have had that view. It's tempting. I've had views to talk to umpires during the game. I have spoken to umpires during games, but never about calls they've made, just about things going on regarding weather, regarding things going on with the ballpark or anything. I have spoken to umpires after a game, before a game, but never enough to get ejected. I would never bring that embarrassment upon myself. I don't need the public spectacle of that. If an umpire makes a mistake and it's a human error, it happens. But if it's a crappy umpire, I'm going to take my case to Major League Baseball and just try to get him fired. There was one time, and I don't know that I've told you this story, but it's sort of a funny story to me. Jerry Lane, the umpire, I think I've told this on Nothing Personal before. Maybe it was in a mailbag end of month bonus pod. Jerry Lane had made a terrible call, and our in-game entertainment person played the song Penny Lane by the Beatles, and Jerry Lane got so upset he asked me to fire. He called me into the umpire's room after the game because he knew I'm the president of the team and he knew me. He asked me to fire the in-game entertainment guy and whoever was responsible for showing him up in his whole career, and he's had a long-standing career. He's a really nice guy. In his whole career, he had never been shown up in that way. And I laughed. And I said, really, Jerry, you're going to be that sensitive to Penny Lane? I bet you our in-game entertainment guy born in the 90s had never heard of Penny Lane. Either way, I'm not going to get ejected under any scenario. Umpires are tough, right? I mean, there's a bunch of umpire stories dealing with some of their issues pre and post game, dealing with the umpire clubhouse. We would have our visiting clubby take care of the umpire's room as well. We've had some requests where they didn't like the food, they didn't like whatever. They're umpires.